Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. You can check out this album, Dusk Eternal. That's the best of 2025. For me, it's my improvisational music, and you can enjoy it. Let's talk a little bit about the trad LARP. I'll wear my trad hat, my lady. The trad LARP. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a big bunch of drama from some online right-wing trad wife kind of e-girl who got exposed for having cheated for a long period of time on her, at that point, husband, but I think she cheated before they were married. This is a woman who promoted, the trad wife lifestyle or something like that, and she was sleeping with her boss, this guy Eli Schaefer, who has a media company. So it was about as much drama as you would expect to come out of that little corner of the internet. I think she even got her marriage blessed by the Pope after having done these things. So just a huge mess. Now, I only bring that up. It's not necessarily to shame her. I think her name was Sarah Stock, or to, kind of grab onto that drama, but really as a leaping off point to talk about the problem with focusing on traditionalism, or like the trad lifestyle, or whatever you would like to call it. And this is a problem for the right wing because a lot of people start with an idea of something that's going to give them the life that they want, rather than just living the way that they are supposed to live and accepting some of the things that come along with that. Men are very attracted to the idea of a trad wife or a woman being explicitly traditional. There's a lot of reasons for that, but if I'm cutting to the bone of why there's a lot of men, especially with the online right wing, I suppose, that are overly focused with this, it is fear of infidelity. This is a problem with our society because, there's just a lot of temptation in our society. There's temptation from both sides, but the temptation is really different for men and women. And we have to be real that standards for men and women are different, and kind of need to be different. So being cheated on as a man is a profoundly humiliating and degrading experience, where you could be raising someone else's kid, for instance, and men are terrified of this proposition. Because of the nature of the internet, we hear all the horror stories about bad relationships, bad marriages, and there's two extremes to this that I think get talked about a lot on the internet. One is really like the infidelitous woman, which is really awful. And the other one is the sexless marriage, right? The dead bedroom. And both of those are situations that men would like to avoid, whether they've experienced those situations or not. And I am reminded of this cyclical thing that happens every year with this video that I made years ago on MGTOW and sort of my criticisms with MGTOW. This video always has a huge surge in popularity, all negative popularity, in the second half of June of every year. Why in the second half of June? And the reason is because all the MGTOW men are getting out of school. And I realized a while back, most of these guys who are super I'm MGTOW and I'm never going to marry a woman, they're in school. They're college students or they're high school students that are just embracing this philosophy of being alone as a man, and women are bad and they're only going to drag you down, and they're kind of having their little support group seethe about the nature of women, and they haven't really experienced what a bad marriage is. They're taking other people's advice for it. People love to tell stories. Narratives are so powerful to us because when we have a story and we have a great plot to it, we have great characters, we have a conflict, we have either a resolution or a tragic ending, it affects us, whether it's something that's Shakespeare or now more on the internet. And I've talked about this, the idea that you're reading a real story on Reddit, right? You go over to the Am I the Asshole forums, and a lot of those are probably just fake, and they're there to get Reddit karma or something like that. Or they're just there to be an entertaining story, but people get compelled. They get really sucked into the idea of somebody experiencing drama in their lives. It's a very compelling sort of thing. And so we we tend to pay attention to those horror stories that happen, is that this guy was married and this woman divorced him and she took all his money and she took his kids, and like Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall, and like he had this horrible divorce that's been very public where he had to pay so much money, and the judge ordered him to pay more money than he could ever make because it was based on the salary he got paid for making Bug's Life or something like that. Just we hear these horror stories, and I'm telling them to you because they're very compelling. And we don't think about how normative they are. You might know someone in your life that's had a bad divorce. I've known lots of people that have had divorces. Divorce is very common in my generation. It's just probably common in all the generations that could be watching this. And of those divorces, how many were, quote, that bad? And the answer is none. None of them were actually that bad. And in fact, a lot of them were pretty amicable. And in some cases they were bad, but things were over pretty quickly and nobody like got completely hosed on assets or anything like that. Divorces can be bad. Like I know my sister actually works as a, what do you call it? Like a forensic accountant. And so she deals with divorce cases a lot. And so she always has like those crazy anecdotes about divorce, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, your divorce is going to go that way. So people love this narrative and they get attached to this narrative where they're telling a future story that's never going to come true for them. And they're going to make sure it's not going to come true for them. Like, I'm not going to marry a woman and lose my assets. So they have this idea that they're going to, they find out their girlfriend's pregnant and they make their girlfriend take a paternity test because darn it, she could be cheating on me. And it blows up the relationship, or the marriage ends because of the lack of trust, because of how insulting it is to say, I need you to take a paternity test to prove that you are not a cheating hoe. And, we just get very affected by these sorts of narratives to the point where you're unwilling to have the actual experience yourself to judge these sorts of things. So the trad LARP phenomenon is one that I think has been very compelling on social media for all of these reasons, because people want to have the story of the successful trad marriage. They want to have the successful the story of the successful trad wife because that's what they want, because they view the trad wife as the way to escape from all of these bad stories that you hear about marriage, to like be able to guarantee that your marriage is not going to end with this horrible divorce where she takes the kids and she takes all the money and all these sorts of bad things happen, which can happen, and they have happened to people. So they think, oh, this is the way I'm gonna avoid this story. And so of course this thing comes down, and what is it? Well, it's like, oh, that none of that worked, right? The trad wife was still a cheating hoe, and everything bad happened. This hypergamous slut, whatever crazy words you want to use to describe what was going on. It was like the worst kind of fear that men harbor about. It's like an attack on one of the biggest insecurities that men can have, which is whether their children are their own, right? If you have some sort of doubt about that, that can be a deeply unsettling thought, that your resources, your time, your attention, your love is going to a kid that isn't yours. So people are looking at the trad wife as the way that I'm going to escape from all of these negatives in our culture. And it turns out it ain't that simple. And unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but just because you're able to meet a girl in church doesn't mean you're going to be able to avoid divorce. Now, are you guaranteed to have a divorce? I don't think so. And I think when you actually look at all the statistics, I've gone over this in other videos, they're more, the outlook is probably better than you think it is. But moreover, I think people need to realize the reality of having a relationship with another person is that relationship is a day-by-day thing. Right? You are always investing in your marriage or your romantic relationship or even friendships, or you are withdrawing from what you've invested. And if you are always withdrawing what you invested, then it's going to crumble, whether somebody is infidelitous or not, or it can cause infidelity. There's all kinds of things. So what tends to happen is we hear the story, we hear the compelling narrative, and here's the cause, here's the effect, here's the characters, here's the plot, here's the things that happened in this really compelling story. But when you're not seeing the day-to-day of how people treated each other, whether they treated them badly or, this or that or the other, you don't see all the little details that create all of those strange behaviors that you may be experiencing. So with the trad LARP. Why do we have this trad LARP? That's the question. Why are they doing the trad LARP? Well, people are attracted to it, and the robot rewards people for LARPing. So if somebody gets online and they make a statement like, women need to be like this, women need to be Catholic trad wives, or whatever it's going to be, they get a bunch of attention for it. And women love attention, and men love attention, and attention, it's the attention economy. The attention will bring you money. So if you say it one time and you get rewarded for it, what are you going to do? Are you just going to keep saying that thing? The robot liked me to say that thing, so I'm just going to say the thing again. I'm going to get my attention in the algorithm. I'm going to sell my Patreon. I'm going to sell my book. By the way, you can, my Patreon's linked down below. You can actually get this album is for free for patrons, right? If you want some crazy, super long form improvisational kind of mood, ambient, jazz, whatever this crazy electronic stuff is, check it out. You get it. Yeah, if you're a Patreon member, you get it for free. But you know that you're paying attention to me, and I guess I'm monetizing it. There'll be ads on this, and I'm selling you on the Patreon, selling books, selling album, whatever it's going to be. So they just do that, right? They engage in the LARP, even if it's a complete farce, as it was in this particular example that I'm using to lead into this. So why are they doing it? Because they get rewarded for doing it. They get a reward for pretending. And the problem with pretending is that eventually that check comes due. You can't pretend forever. You have to be your authentic self on some level. And having made at this point thousands of YouTube videos, thousands of hours of live streams and stuff, like me is pretty much out there, and I just have to live with that, whether it causes hate mail. I still get hate mail. You know, it's one of those things that you just don't ever like get super used to, is like getting hate mail from people. It's like, someone hates me. It's like, yeah, but that person can't affect you. So try not to take it too hard on yourself if you ever get hate mail. If you have any online exposure and you start getting hate mail from people, I still get hate mail. I get hate mail from people who say that they're my fans. You know, it's like, no, you clearly hate me for whatever reason, but it's okay. You know, you get that sort of thing. The robot is going to reinforce whatever you're doing. And so the LARP continues until it breaks down, and then it becomes a big scandal, and the right gets scandalized. Are there any traditional women? Yeah, you're probably not going to find them on Twitter. You know, you might find them at church, but most women are not going to church necessarily to meet a man. You're going to have to figure out a different way to like get to know somebody, to maybe present like a romantic question to them later on. The dating field is just really nuts right now, and our culture is very helter-skelter. Our culture's all over the place. There is a lot of bad stuff that's going on in our culture, as far as like barriers to having the domestic life that people want. But what a lot of people who aren't married and who are fantasizing about this trad lifestyle don't realize is that the domestic reality of marriage is a lot more mundane and a lot more grindy than you might think it is. I have a pretty awesome life. I love my life, but there's a lot of tedium that goes into my day, right? You doing laundry and dishes, and luckily my kids are a little older now, so I'm not changing diapers anymore, but like changing diapers and kids waking up and kids going to sleep, and there's like a grind to the family that's great if you love your family. But it's not some glamorous thing where it's like, I'm going to homestead my farm. And like most of this is just fantasy land. Like most people can't afford to buy a homestead, and they don't have the time to farm on the side. That's just not realistic. People need regular jobs with regular money coming in, because our modern life is structured around inputs and outputs as far as money goes. So you just got to live your life in the best way that you know how to live it. And you just need to vet a potential spouse. You need to thoroughly vet your partner, figure out what that person's values are and what their past was and what their future is and what they're committed to doing in the future and what they want to do in the future. And you have to feel all those things out before you just commit, because just because the person goes to church doesn't mean they're like living that way, right? And doesn't mean they want to live that way forever. And just because a person is espousing right-wing ideas does not mean that they're really going to feel that way. I had a good friend years ago, and his girlfriend pretended to be into metal. And only later she's like, I actually don't like that. And he's like, what? I thought we had this common interest. And she's like, no, I just tried to get into that because I liked you. And it's like, well, now I don't know what we have in common at all. I thought we had this deep fandom of metal music, but I guess we don't have that. So what is going on here? These sorts of things happen. It takes a while to kind of ferret those things out. You need to be yourself, but you also need to vet your partner so you don't get like trapped or sucked into a situation that you don't like. And commitment, the reality of commitment too is that commitment is not just about happy fun times and Pinterest moments and stuff like that. It's about the hard times. It's about illness and sickness and infirmary, in sickness and in health and the grind and those sorts of things. We don't see online a lot of the day-to-day realities of domestic life, and maybe that would put people into a better perspective and understand family is a calling. It's not a thing that it's just like you don't add it as a lifestyle bonus to what you already do. It's a thing that is all consuming. You have to feel called to like, I'm going to have a family. I'm going to be a family man, and I'm going to arrange my family this way. And it takes like a day-to-day commitment to continuing it through. It's far less glamorous than the robot delivering you tweets that kind of spark your neurons and make you feel like, I can escape the traps of modern society by just marrying a trad wife. I'm sorry, it's a little more complicated than that. You're going to have to do a little bit more vetting than maybe you would have to done in the past. And there are many potential negative outcomes that can come from any path that you choose, whether you choose to get married or not get married or whatever you end up choosing to do with your life. But that's the thing that I want to get across here with like the trad LARP is that they LARP because people like it. People, especially men, are really invested in the idea of like the traditional lifestyle. Lots of women are as well, because they want to escape from the sort of grind of modern life, and they have an idyllic vision of what it means to be like a trad wife. And most of the girls that you see on Pinterest, they're like, I'm a trad wife and here's me cooking. Like, they're really well kept, or they have a lot of followers that just make a lot of money for them. So it's easy to have the lifestyle that you see on Pinterest. I'll bring the female perspective into this a little bit, right? The curated Pinterest view, the curated Instagram view is not reality. And the reality of being a mom is that it's hard, right? There's a lot that goes into being a mom. There may be a lot of nights where you're not getting a lot of sleep because baby's sick or whatever. Baby has an earache. You're not sleeping. It happens. But you love your kids so much that you do that. It's a very fulfilling life, and I would encourage people to consider that and say like, I want to have the fulfillment of being a parent, because it's not all that easy. But we have a glamorous idea, or we have this belief that if it's just a trad wife, then I can avoid the bad things about life. And I'm sorry, it's going to take more effort from everybody than just people who believe that we should be more traditional, and things like that. So I will tip my fedora to you, to my 4% of my viewers who are women, according to YouTube. Thank you for watching this. And to the rest of you guys, have a good one out there. Leave me your thoughts down below about this phenomenon. I know I've rambled on about it, but I've just been thinking about it today, and I just wanted to get my thoughts out there and kind of ask you guys for your thoughts. Here's my monetizing my attention. You can grab this album right now. I do have books that are there too. So, boom, here's some books and some music. You can buy those. I'm always appreciative of reviews as well. So check those out, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great, great day.